Hello, friends. Recently, the Government of India decided to raise about 6 trillion rupees by leasing infrastructure assets of central government and state run public sector companies. Today, we are going to discuss how this decision of setting up a national monetization pipeline is going to affect growth in Indian economy. In other words, what is the funda behind it? First of all, let us get familiar with the term monetization. The term monetization may be defined differently in different contexts. For example, in economics, monetization may imply infusing more money or printing more money in the economy. This may, of course, raise concerns about the resultant changes in supply or value of money. We also use the term monetization in the context of an economy which converts itself from a traditional barter economy into a modern economy where the goods and services can rather be exchanged for money. Okay, these are some of the familiar ways that we talk about or explain the term monetization. But when we come across a news that the government is planning to raise a huge amount of money through monetization of infrastructures, we may like to know what is it all about. Well, the funda is that through this monetization, the government is thinking about raising capital from infrastructure assets that currently don't generate revenue. The idea is to hand over infra assets like gas pipelines, roads, and telecom towers, and a lot other assets to the private firms on a long-term lease. According to the media reports, the government plans to lease 26,700 kilometers of roads, 90 passenger trains, 400 railway stations, 28,608 circuit kilometer transmission lines, 286,000 kilometers of BharatNet fiber network, and 14,917 towers owned by state-run BSNL and MTN. There are also plans to lease out other core infrastructure assets such as airports in smaller cities, dedicated freight corridor assets, warehousing assets of state-run companies, and things like sports stadiums, etc. These funds would then be used to build new infrastructure projects. The government has assured that the funds will be raised through leasing and there would not be any land sale happening under it. The assets are also brownfield assets where investment has already been made and they are now underutilized or languishing. In my opinion, it is going to be a win-win proposition for both the private sector and the government. The logic is simple. The infrastructure projects require huge investments, having a long gestation period in most cases. The private sector may not be inclined to set up infra projects in such cases, but they may show interest in operating these projects, which would rather require less of bulky investments and may give them quick returns. On the other hand, the government needs resources to extend infrastructure facilities in areas which are in need for them. Monetization gives them a chance to raise additional resources in a non-inflationary manner. This may give rise to a virtuous circle of growth as opposed to the vicious circle of poverty which often characterize a developing economy. How this virtual circle of monetization of infrastructure assets would work? Well, let me explain it to you through this diagram. At the first stage, we talk about creation of infra assets by government or public sector units. then leasing out some of the less performing infra assets to the private sector, which would probably operate them in a profitable manner, leading to more revenue generation, more employment, higher incomes, higher taxes, or resources to the government, which may be deployed to develop additional infra assets by the government and the public sector enterprises. So this seems to be a welcome move by the government. Not only the idle or underutilized assets will get monetized, but the private participation will create employment for people, not only in the infra sector, also in other sectors such as agriculture and MSMEs in rural and semi-urban areas. The growth can be achieved without creating additional pressures on the fiscal equations for the government, giving impetus to growth, and that too in a relatively less inflationary manner. Thank you, and keep discussing fundas with me.